This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy to see if you could save when you bundle your home and auto policies. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary, not available in all states.
Did you know that foreign investors are quietly funding lawsuits in American courts through a practice called third-party litigation funding? Shadowy overseas funders are paying to sue American companies in our courts, and they don't pay a dime in U.S. taxes if there is an award or settlement. They profit tax-free from our legal system, while U.S. companies are tied up in court, and American families pay the price, to the tune of $5,000 a year. But there is a solution. A new proposal before Congress would close this loophole and ensure these foreign investors pay taxes, just like the actual plaintiffs have to. It's a common sense move that discourages frivolous and abusive lawsuits and redirects resources back into American jobs, innovation, and growth. Only President Trump and congressional Republicans can deliver this win for America and hold these foreign investors accountable. Contact your lawmakers today and demand they take a stand to end foreign-funded litigation abuse.
Hello and welcome to Just Films and That, with me, Josh Hallam.
And me, Alice Oliver. This is the podcast where we talk about films that we think are underrated, underappreciated, or we just wanted to talk about them.
We're also going to get stuck into some classic films that one of us maybe hasn't seen, and maybe throw in some great guests along the way. So we'll start, as we do every week, with a random question. Alice, what was your first job? What was your first job?
Well, I think possibly like many of our listeners, paper round. And I wasn't sure whether that really counts because I was like 11 years old or whatever. But, you know, money exchanged hands. I was paid to do a thing and I did that thing. But yeah, I had a paper round from about 11 till 15. But really massively cheated because my dad helped me, bless him. Like after his working day, like he'd be at work for 9 or 10 hours and then come and help me do my paper round.
Your paper round was in the evening?
Yeah. Oh, so it was an evening one. It was once a week. It was on a Friday night, or you could do it on a Saturday morning. But they gave you the newspapers on the Friday night and would have preferred you to do it on the Friday night, but they'd let you off with a Saturday morning. But no, I did have friends in school who had one. I had one mate called Holly. She did one Monday to Friday every single morning before school when she's like 12, 13. I was like, hats off to you, mate. That's hardcore.
Yeah, that's what I did. I did.
Amazing.
Monday to Saturday.
Really?
Yeah, £8 a week.
£8 a week.
So I got whole pounds.
I got £10 for my one. But
fucking hell.
Well,
what?
I wonder
£10 for what? How many fucking papers are you delivering?
It was quite a few. Like I think a couple of hundred.
Right, fair enough.
Was it a couple of hundred?
Mine was
That's what I was thinking.
30.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe the early morning ones were a little bit shorter. But I also, for the last couple of years, sort of between age 14, 15, I did it on my rollerblades. So that was a lot of fun. Yeah, I was a pretty cool kid. But I tell you, get a bit off balance when you've got like this fucking massive weight just down one side. But yeah, that was my first one. And then after that, cleaner, like in our high school, they would like hire the students to clean the school.
Oh yeah.
So I did that, and the pay was actually really good. It was like £6.50 or something, which was loads back then. Because we're talking like mid 2000s, and I was like 15, 16 years old. But yeah. So what was your? I take it paper round as well.
Paper round, but like outside of paper round, because that's just like a rite of passage in it. It's not like a job. It's like almost everybody does it. I did pot washing in a restaurant. I didn't last very long because I was only like 14 and I was too, I just couldn't keep up. I was almost like sort of too little, really. How pathetic is that?
Well, I don't know, mate, because kitchen environment is an intense environment.
It's tough.
Like I've done cafes, hotels, and then more recently Weatherspoons. And that it is an intense environment.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's hardcore for a 14-year-old to be in
I
that
remember,
sort of place.
it's funny talking about the £6.50 an hour. I remember the first time I got a full-time job, it was in the summer after school when I was 16. And I just worked in the shop of a timber yard. So selling, all the stuff that goes with the timber and paints and all that sort of stuff. I remember sitting down with the manager and he looked at me and was like, minimum wage for your age is $3.30. And then he sort of winked at me and went, but we'll give you $3.60 an hour. And it was like, that felt like loads to me at the time.
Yeah, no, the same. After because I had a bit of a funny one where I sort of dropped out of sixth form and then was waiting to go to college like the year or the year after that. And I worked in a cafe. And I'd done like a few days and sort of I hadn't been paid and we hadn't really talked about money or whatever. And my boss was just like, right, here you go. And gave me 70 quid for about like maybe a week's work. And I was like, oh my God, like it was the most money I'd ever held in my hands. Yeah, man. But that was like £4.50 an hour. But that felt like tons of money back then.
So we'll move on to talking about this week's film, which is Happy Go Lucky from 2008. So if you haven't seen that one, then spoiler warning for you. I was going to do a plot synopsis, but it's sort of difficult to do a plot synopsis because there sort of isn't one. But the best I can do is it's a film about Poppy, played by Sally Hawkins. She is a primary school teacher living and working in London. She's essentially perpetually and relentlessly optimistic. And the film just follows her daily life as she sort of hangs out with her sister and her flatmates, takes driving lessons from a paranoid downbeat instructor, and starts dating a guy that she meets through work. And that's about the long and short of the plot. Alice, so I was really interested to know, had you seen this one before?
I hadn't seen this one and hadn't heard of it. So again, like going in with no prior knowledge to it, which I really do enjoy. But I think you did quite a good job there of summarizing it, because one of the things obviously you come away from it thinking is nothing really happened.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that it's not entertaining. It was kind of a really interesting example of that. Why did you pick this one? Is this sort of underrated, underseen for you?
So I picked this because it's underseen. So I went to see this at the cinema whilst I was at college, and I sort of found it really uplifting and optimistic at the time. So it must have been when it came out. And I hadn't seen it for years. I hadn't seen it for, possibly I might have seen it once more since I saw it at the cinema. And I wanted to rewatch it and see if I felt the same way. I came to think of it because I recently watched The Shape of Water, and Sally Hawkins is obviously in that. And
so that was her. I did
yeah,
think. I was like,
is
that her from The Shape of Water?
Yeah, and I wanted to watch a film with her in it. It's definitely, I would probably say, critically, it's well received. But having spoken to the odd person about it, I've not met many people who have seen it. It's not like a big, huge blockbuster or anything like that. So I think with this film, I'm really interested to know what you think. But before you tell me, I think you'll either go possibly one of two ways. I think either you might think it's sort of quite wonderful and uplifting and lovely, or you think it's completely pointless. There's no plot and it's really irritating. Those are the two opinions from the people that I've spoken to who have seen it. Those are the opinions I've got. So go on, what did you think?
I mean, I certainly didn't think it was irritating or pointless. I think there's really something to be said for making a film essentially about nothing. And it is just like the camera has just been plonked in the middle of these people's lives. Like there's no real introduction, there's no middle, there's no sort of resolution. It's just kind of life as it's happening. It did sort of make me think a bit like think of it as like a feature-length episode of EastEnders, like just sort of, I mean, obviously because it's so London as well and so Cockney. But no, I thought it was really endearing. I thought the script was really interesting. I thought the performances were great. And I could really relate to it a lot. Obviously, Poppy and her friends are sort of women in their 30s. And you just kind of, it really had that vibe of sort of like still getting to that age and still kind of being lost and not really knowing what it is that you want to do. And, there'd be scenes where they were getting like way too pissed in their front room and the sun was coming up and it's like, what are you doing with your life? And then I think Poppy had a few moments where she was like she just likes being free. She doesn't like the idea of having kids. Like she just kind of enjoys living her life as she is living it. So I could really relate to it. And it was quite a female heavy cast as well, which I quite enjoyed. So I really loved the location and how the location was just kind of so personified with all of them. Like they're so Cockney. They've got these such strong Cockney accents. So my husband's Cockney, my mum's from London. Like I've always had like a positive association with it. And I find as well that many Cockneys that I've met, that I've come across, do have this quite happy-go-lucky sensibility. It's usually sort of from coming through adversity and sort of masking, maybe things that weren't so great when they were younger, but they've now adopted this kind of positive attitude, and that's what sort of gets them through the day. Yeah, like I said, there's no real beginning, so there's no real character introduction. It's not like it starts, and in most films you get the beginning scene is, they say everyone's names a lot. They say kind of what they're doing. And it's like, oh, well, I'll see you at this place later. And then we'll go to this place because my mum is this, blah, blah, blah. Just loads of information and loads of exposition about what's going on. But you didn't really get that. You just kind of had to figure it out for yourself. But I feel like the acting made that easier. Like you could kind of tell what kind of people they were, and you could kind of tell how they felt about their lives and where they were through their performances and through the script. Some of the just kind of British iconography. So obviously we're in a primary school for some of it, and it just feels so British, and they're using Pritt stick, and there's all these it just feels so Britishy.
Everyone's been in that classroom, haven't they? Everyone's been in that classroom.
I was like, how often do you see Pritt stick in a film, really, though? Like, really think about it.
Yeah, there's not there's not like a scene in Iron Man where he's putting it together and he's like, oh, I need a Pritt stick for this.
Anyone got a stick of glue? Some of the plot points I thought were really interesting, and it was a lot about Poppy kind of wanting to learn new things. So obviously one of the main storylines is that she's learning to drive, and we get to see her interactions with her driving instructor. And she's a 30-year-old woman, and I learned to drive when I was 25. So like a little bit older than is the standard, 17, 18. Yeah. So I reckon it is quite daunting and a bit weird to be finally learning to drive when you're 30. But if you live in London, why bother, innit? Like, why would you learn to drive? So it makes sense that she waited so long. And then also we get her in the flamenco class or in the dance class. And that's a really interesting scene. And I can't really remember the exact details, but I wrote down that scene was really entertaining and really funny. I think it was to do with the teacher. I think she had quite a lot of funny moments. So it was just it was almost like a coming of age story for a 30-year-old woman.
That's exactly it's exactly that, isn't it? It's nothing, but it's also it's everything, because it's such a slice of life film. I mean, so this is directed by Mike Leigh. So if you're listening and you don't know who Mike Leigh is, then do give him a Google, because he's done some really interesting films, because he does a lot of really naturalistic sort of social pieces and that sort of thing. If you think of like Secrets and Lies and that sort of thing, but then the other end of it is this, and he's got a really interesting way of working, which I want to ask you about shortly. But so he takes an idea for a story. I believe this is right from what I've read about him, and he sort of comes up with an idea, and then he takes the actors, and they devise and improvise over a long period of time. So the script isn't necessarily a finished script. They come up with it over the course of a few weeks. I think they sometimes might go away and live together for a little while, and then they come back with a script. So a lot of the dialogue, if you think about particularly between Scott and Poppy, the driver instructor, and Poppy, the main character, is a mixture of them improvising and reacting to what's around them in character, and devising, what would your character say in this situation? Why would Scott really have a problem with Poppy wearing high heel boots to drive in, that sort of thing. So it's a lot different from other films we've done, which is, and every piece is different. Some people, the script is the script, you do not deviate from the script. And some people, the script is a guide, and some people it's a bit of both. They like to let their actors ad-lib, that sort of thing. Whereas this is right the other end of the scale from probably anything else we've done, in terms of how reliant it is on the actors to create their characters, stay in those characters, and almost create the story from from their own heads. And I just think that's really interesting because I think it gives you this really authentic and naturalistic slice of life. Like, it's the closest of all the films I think I can see. Mike Leigh and Ken Loach are people who is another one. If you think about Daniel Blake and Kez and things like that, who create real life cinema, and none of them are ever, these massive blockbuster hits. But I think there's something to be said for holding a mirror up to your audience that is so close to what they're used to seeing, and that's something I really like about the film. But I was interested, do you think that it being so close to real life helped immerse you into it, or was it too close and you would rather have something more escapist?
The thing is, I can honestly take both. Like,
yeah, you can take Star Wars, can't you? You can take this or whatever.
Exactly. Like, I love kind of high fantasy and sort of, crazy storylines. And for me, it's all about the writing is always a huge thing for me. Like, if something's got a shoddy script, then I'm just not bothered. Like, I remember this wasn't so much a shoddy script, but obviously a while ago we did Perfume, the Story of a Murderer. And one of my comments about that was just that most of the conversation didn't feel like any kind of real conversation that people would have. And that makes you very aware that you're watching something that has been scripted, which I think you lose some of that connection with it in that regard. But with this, I did really enjoy it. And it's odd because why? It's like watching a home movie almost.
It's mad, isn't it?
It's just real life. Why is this entertaining? Why do I like this? But a lot of it is that sort of relatability factor, isn't it? It's about seeing someone experience something that you can relate to and that you feel like you've experienced as well. And there's just something comforting in that, and just kind of knowing, oh, I'm not the only person who feels like this, and I'm not the only person who's gone through that sort of thing. The ad-libbing thing, I think, does really add to it, because I did think, like, it was still entertaining, which I suppose says a lot about the actors themselves, even though it was ad-libbed, but it still felt completely normal as well. But, like, sometimes real life conversations are funny and they are interesting, even if they're not scripted. It kind of just depends who you're chatting to. But yeah, no, just really interesting. But what were you going to say?
It's really interesting you say that, because, like, that, for taking Perfume as an example, that was a case of a film set in a real world. Obviously, it was historical, but a lot of the imagery is what we have come to believe was what things looked like back in the 1800s, etc. And so, fantastical dialogue against realistic setting, I think that's what took you out of the film a little bit. Whereas if you take something like Star Wars and they're saying, completely fantastical science fiction dialogue, but because it's set in that world, it doesn't take you out of it. If you think about him holding a laser sword or building a space station that can blow up a planet, that sort of thing, that's absolutely ridiculous. But because it's set in that world, it doesn't take you out of it, because it's all encompassing, isn't it? But yeah, I think one of the interesting things about the ad-lib dialogue is that when you think about films about real life or social issues or anything like that, you do think about things like Secrets and Lies, or, like you say, kitchen sink dramas, or Daniel Blake. And I think it has this connotation of being quite glum. It's there to either send a political message or it's there to make a point of some kind. Whereas this, it is that, but it's just a character just bumbling along, just having a nice time. And I think it's really interesting, because I don't know of another film that is made in this way that is also just uplifting and happy.
Yeah, no, I agree. What did you think about Poppy and Scott's relationship?
So I really enjoyed that, and that for me is down to their two performances. I think everyone, all the actors in it are good, but those two, so Sally Hawkins and Eddie Marzan, who plays Scott, stand out for me. I think they're brilliant, because the contrast between the two, you got Poppy, and she's sweet and she's funny and she's kind. She's upbeat. She's just constantly optimistic. I mean, she's happy-go-lucky, right? That's the title of the film. And she's very likable. And then you got Scott, and he sort of feels like a real person you might meet at a wedding or in a pub. He's got all these mad conspiracy theories about the world, and they sort of bleed over into his dialogue. And you can see how they've built that character up from that. They've started with this thread and they've pulled on it, and then they've built on it, and then they've created this rounded person, which is Scott. So he is, not only has he got all these mad ideas about the world, but he's also got that really strange, toxic male entitlement. Poppy is nice to him, so I'm entitled to objectify you, and I'm always entitled to, I don't know, it's that thing, isn't it? Why don't you want to sleep with me? It's that male entitlement, isn't it? You're being nice to me, so you must want to sleep with me. And it's a really strange thing, but it's a very real thing. And I quite liked how this dealt with it, because the only time the film ever really gets, well, not the film, where Poppy, the character, ever gets serious is sort of towards the culmination of the film, when she does challenge Scott. They don't have a massive row, but she challenges him on his behavior, and I think that's really interesting, because it's the only time in the film you ever see her being serious. There's even a whole scene where obviously she's a primary school teacher, and it deals with it doesn't say exactly what, but hints of sort of child abuse, and even then she's serious in the context of the scene, but all the way through the film she laughs at everything. She doesn't take anything seriously, and then when it comes to him at the end, she literally almost puts her foot down. So I really enjoyed it.
Nice pun there with the driving lessons.
What can I say?
But it's such an intense environment to be in as well. Like anyone, like we all remember learning to drive. Like you're stressed out anyway, and then you're in such close proximity with this other person. It's like you want to be able to trust them, and you want to be able, like, because it's a teacher-student relationship that they have. It's like he shouldn't be objectifying her no matter what, even if she said like, "Oh, I fancy you a bit" or whatever. He shouldn't be doing any of that. He is her teacher in that situation. He is dominant over her because she has to do what he says. She is in his car. Like if he decided to lock the doors and drive off with her, he could do that. But yeah, just a really good kind of depiction, like you say, of that kind of sort of almost toxic masculinity style of behavior. And it's like when they have this row, so he kicks off at her because she started going out with someone else, and he's like, well, I thought you liked me. And he says like, this is your fault. Like you did this by dressing that way and behaving that way. But she doesn't take it at all.
No.
It's like, just because she seems nice on the outside, it's like she's obviously grown up in the East End of London. Like she knows how to hold her own, and she isn't going to let you take advantage of her. Yeah.
She is nice to you because she is a nice person. That doesn't mean she wants to go home with you or be your girlfriend or sleep with you. She's just a nice person. So, get over yourself, basically.
And because she wasn't even that flirty.
No, she's not. Like, she's not flirty
at all. The conversations were never of a sexual nature. Like she didn't really. I don't think she led him on really at all. But he's just like. But we know that he's a bit bonkers, don't we? Because doesn't he start talking? Does he start talking about QAnon? Maybe not QAnon exactly, but like
believes
those
in all sorts of like Illuminati type conspiracy theories, I think, doesn't he? Because the whole pyramid thing that he keeps referring to, I think it's a reference to a book about the Illuminati, possibly. I'm not entirely sure, but no, he has all sorts of mad conspiracy theories about the education system creating zombies and keeping you down and all that sort of thing. But I think that's the real triumph of the film, is that all the characters feel really real. Like there's no dialogue that feels out of place. You got Poppy, who's really upbeat. Of all the characters in it, she probably feels the least real, but that's because those people who are so optimistic and upbeat are few and far between. But then you think of Scott, or you think of the guy who eventually becomes Poppy's boyfriend, or her flatmate. They're just normal people, just going about their daily lives. Something I was actually going to ask you, which was keen to get to ask you. Obviously, this film is the big contrast that we've just talked about, is that Poppy is very optimistic and Scott is very pessimistic. Would you say you're an optimist, a pessimist, or a realist? Or some of one that isn't, I haven't just listed.
I think, I'd like to think I'm a realist, but I think I do lean more towards pessimism. Before you knew me, Josh, and even for a couple of the first years that we did know each other, I was quite a miserable person. And I think I'm still sort of holding on to some of that. But I think I'm getting better. I find as I'm getting older, because you just get because when you just kind of get used to things being a bit shit, then when things aren't as shit, it feels quite good.
You sort of mellow out with age, really.
Yeah, I think so. I'm certainly less anxious than I used to be, and I can manage my stress a lot better. But I'm definitely not optimistic. Why? What about you?
I'm not optimistic. I'd love to say I was. It depends how I am at the time. Sometimes I am optimistic. I genuinely do change and chop and change and all that sort of thing. I think most people who know me personally would probably say I'm a pessimist. Similar to you, I like to think I'm a realist, but I think really the answer to this question is that no one is any of those things, because if you are any one of those things, I think you're probably a little bit unbalanced, right? You're either Eeyore or you're Poppy from Happy Go Lucky. I think everyone's somewhere in between, but I'd probably say I'm going to go out on a limb and say I'm a realist.
Yeah, definitely. But no, yeah, you're right. I think everyone is just a mix of all those things. It just kind of depends, depends how you feel when you wake up in the morning, doesn't it?
And what's going on in your life and all that sort of thing. So we'll move on to things that we perhaps didn't like about the film. Was there anything for you that you didn't like?
So this isn't even something that I didn't like. It was just something that I noticed. But when they're driving around, obviously when Poppy's learning to drive, there was one scene where they used the same background twice, and it just sort of repeated itself. So they turn around a corner and there's a bright blue, and I believe it's a Citroen Picasso in sort of the sort of rear right hand of the what do they call it? With the winds? No, what's the rear window called? Rear window, right?
Yeah, the rear window.
It's just the rear window. I was like, what do they call that rear window on cars? That's the rear window. Okay. So I literally just noticed that one time they turned a corner and there was this bright blue Citroen Picasso in the background, and then they drove for a little bit longer, turned another corner, and it was just the exact same background done twice over. But that's not a dislike. Like, I wasn't like, well, this film is terrible now. Just like a little blooper, maybe.
I'm not watching any more of this film if that fucking Picasso is in it again.
But hey, maybe there are tons of bright blue Citroen Picassos in London, and therefore, it might have just been two different cars. But that was the only thing. There wasn't really anything not really anything I didn't like about it. I think if you get on board with that style of filmmaking and that style of storytelling, then there is just a lot to enjoy about it. But I can definitely see how, for some people, some groups of people, this just wouldn't be their thing at all.
Yeah. I think when I went to watch it with a class at college. So obviously we all discussed it afterwards because that was why we went to watch it. It was the whole point of the module. And it was quite polarizing. There was a lot of people sort of said, she was really irritating. Some people who just loved it. For me, again, there's not loads. I'm not a fan of the Picasso either, but I didn't even notice that. I think so. Some people have said, I think I watched this with my other half, possibly, and she sort of said, I just don't see the point of it, or that Poppy's a little bit irritating. But I kind of think that's the point, because it is literally like we said, an actual slice of life sort of film. I mean, she is, at some points, she is a bit David Brent. She does make really shit jokes. She does a lot of going, oh, I don't drink, or whatever, on the, that sort of thing, sort of sat off jokes off to the side. But that is the point, isn't it? Is that she's got such a sunny disposition that she's always making those jokes. And again, perhaps you could say she's a bit too perfect as a character. She's a bit flawless. But again, I don't know if she is, because I think her being so optimistic is perhaps her flaw, because she does sort of put herself in situations where she could be taken advantage of, or where she could be almost in danger, like with Scott, with the driving instructor. She's very casual about the fact that she sees him watching her on the street. A lot of people phone the police in that scenario.
That was pretty stalkerish, wasn't it?
So I don't really have a dislike. Those are just some points that I think people may feel about it. But personally, no, I can't say I do have a dislike.
I feel like there is a couple of ways you could sort of view Poppy, but for me, it's so I didn't find her irritating at all, and I definitely would have done maybe a few years ago when I was, maybe a bit more miserable, and because, misery loves company, and it's like, get these optimistic people away from me. But now, for me, when someone is like that, this is obviously just my opinion, but usually they're masking something. Like there are some deep scars there from something that has happened in their childhood, or maybe something in their sort of adolescence. It's very rare that you would meet somebody like that, who acts like that, who has that kind of attitude and has that sunny disposition, who hasn't already been through something. Because you usually find that when people have been through something, that's been quite horrible or traumatic, because they're now not going through that anymore, everything is pretty great. And it's like, wow, every minute that I don't have to feel as rubbish as that, I get to feel like this. And I think people who find it irritating are probably just miserable themselves, right? It's like, how can you get irritated at someone else being happy? Like, life is so hard and things can be so grim sometimes. Like, why would you get annoyed that someone can just find the joy in anything?
So we'll move on to talking about the critical reception in a moment, Alice, because I believe you've got a little journey to take us on.
I have indeed, Josh. Follow me now and you listeners down the rabbit hole for this bit that we're going to call Alice Down the Rabbit Hole. So, what do we know about Poppy's love interest, Tim, played by Samuel Rukin? Well, Josh, Samuel was born just down the road in Southport in 1980. He went to school in Crosby, where his love of drama flourished, and he could often be found starring in the school productions, and even heads back there sometimes to present acting workshops. Not only is Samuel an actor, but he's also a DJ, learning on some old-fashioned kit in his garage at home when he was a teenager, and this seems to be his real passion, making quite a name for himself over in Los Angeles. He's been described as using EDM as an expressive tool and a platform to initiate social change. In 2017, he set up a pop-up nightclub called Voltage in Virginia, with proceeds going to a not-for-profit organization supporting the LGBTQ+ community. He was in Virginia at the time filming Turn, Washington's Spies, a drama about the American Revolutionary War in which he plays Captain John Graves Simcoe, a British Army general who founded such places as New York and Toronto, and is seen by many Canadians as a founding figure in Canadian history. A somewhat erratic character, Rukin said he had a lot of fun bringing to life Simcoe's somewhat sociopathic tendencies, embracing the challenge of portraying such a complex character. And that, Josh, was Alice Down the Rabbit Hole.
Not many podcasts go from someone in a Mike Leigh film to electronic dance music to a sociopathic Canadian historical figure. But there we go. That's
what I'm here for, guys. I'm here to take you on these journeys. What I do really like about that as well is, so I'm a little bit obsessed with anything that's to do with the American Revolutionary War.
Oh, right.
And I had no idea that this TV show existed, and now I do. So I'm definitely going to go and watch it all.
So we'll move on to talking about the critical reception then. Now, I picked this because it's underseen. I don't think it was critically poorly rated, but let's have a look then. So on IMDb at the time of recording, it gets a straight 7 out of 10. And on Rotten Tomatoes, the audience give it 67% and the critics give it 93%.
Whoa.
So that's the figure.
A whopping 93.
Yeah, so the 93% is sort of what I thought it was. Not maybe that might be a little high, but I know that when it came out, it did get in a lot of year-end lists and that sort of thing. So what do we think? On the whole, is that fair? Is it underrated at all?
That's kind of what I expected, to be honest, maybe a little bit high from the critics, but not that it's not deserving of it, because I can absolutely see the quality in it. And there is such a skill in being able to make a film essentially about nothing and being able to make that work. Not really surprised at the audience figures or scores, because I think if you're not into that, like it could, like you said about the people you've spoken to about it, it is quite polarizing. And if you're not into that, then this definitely isn't for you, because it is absolutely just that thing, isn't it? It's, we've dropped a camera in the middle of someone's life. Here they are for a few months, end of film. Well, what happened? Nothing really. So if you're not into that, then this definitely isn't for you. So I can definitely see why the audience would give it that. But I guess rounding it up altogether, maybe appropriately rated, but certainly underseen. Why? What do you think?
I think I'd agree. I think I'd probably say I think I'd average it out. I think the critics is slightly high and the audience is slightly low. So if we average that out, it's sort of bang in the middle. If you sort of maybe averaged it out as an 8 or something like that, I think that'd be fair. And I think it is underseen because I don't know many people who have seen it. So, I mean, if you have seen it and you have a thought on it, then please do get in touch. But I think it's safe to say we're going for underseen on this one.
Yeah, definitely.
So there we go, another underseen one to add to the pile. Do check it out if you are looking for something that's sort of quite light and uplifting. Alice, it's your turn to pick next week. What are we watching?
So, Josh, we are going to be watching In the Heart of the Sea.
In the Heart of the Sea. Is that Chris Hemsworth?
It is indeed. It is. And Tom Holland, I believe. So Thor and Spider-Man together.
Having a good old time. Thor and
Indeed.
Spider-Man. But they're not those characters because they're professional actors and paid to do it for a job.
What?
Are you telling me that Chris Hemsworth can't fly?
I've lost all interest. Pick another film.
Let's just do Ragnarok. Next week, Thor, Ragnarok. Right, so next week, please do join us. We're going to be talking about In the Heart of the Sea, which is Alice's pick. In the meantime, if you could go on Apple Podcasts and give us a 5-star review, it would be very much appreciated because it helps other people notice us and they can hear us talk about how Chris Hemsworth can't really fly. And if you'd like to get in touch with us, it's filmsandthatpod@gmail.com. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Just look for Just Films and That. And the website is justfilmsandthatpod.com. Join us next week and we will be talking about In the Heart of the Sea. Alice, thanks very much for joining me.
Thank you, Josh. Pleasure as always.
It's goodbye from me. Cheerio.
Bye.
Did you know that foreign investors are quietly funding lawsuits in American courts through a practice called third-party litigation funding? Shadowy overseas funders are paying to sue American companies in our courts, and they don't pay a dime in U.S. taxes if there is an award or settlement. They profit tax-free from our legal system, while U.S. companies are tied up in court, and American families pay the price, to the tune of $5,000 a year. But there is a solution. A new proposal before Congress would close this loophole and ensure these foreign investors pay taxes, just like the actual plaintiffs have to. It's a common sense move that discourages frivolous and abusive lawsuits and redirects resources back into American jobs, innovation, and growth. Only President Trump and congressional Republicans can deliver this win for America and hold these foreign investors accountable. Contact your lawmakers today and demand they take a stand to end foreign-funded litigation abuse.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy to see if you could save when you bundle your home and auto policies. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary, not available in all states.
Ever wonder what your lashes are destined for? The cards have spoken. Maybelline New York Mascara does it all. Whether you crave fully fan lashes with Lash Sensational, big, bold volume from the Colossal, a dramatic lift with Falsies Lash Lift, or natural-looking volume from Great Lash, your perfect lash future awaits. Manifest your best mascara today. Shop Maybelline New York and discover your lash destiny. Shop now at Walmart.